Bulls and Bears back with another dose of economic reality. It is Tuesday, December 27th, 2022. Thank you for being here. Let's get right into the financial economic news. We got a lot to talk about. Article here out of the Post. Ransacked Buffalo stores as cops are stuck elsewhere. And we're going to see these things escalate. You see, when people are barely scraping by financially, they're going to be more likely to do these things. And it's no coincidence that we see these incidences rising in just about every major city that you look at. Not that it's limited to cities, even in the country, we're just seeing things like this escalate and increase. And that happens when more and more people are going broke. So more evidence that the economy may not be as good as we're being told. No secret again. These things happen when people get more desperate financially. For example, you're not going to see Warren Buffett breaking into a store and stealing some things, right? So the rich don't do these types of things. Now, the rich, let me rephrase that or revise that. The rich do their own criminal activity, but it's usually not smashing into stores and grabbing stuff because they can't afford it. It's usually more like white collar crime, and we see a lot of that. And that's one of the things that I always like to remind people and put that out there as a possible black swan event that's going to cause a major crash and major panic in the markets. If some of this criminality, I'm not talking about the average crime that you see people breaking into stores, I'm talking about the big crime that's so big that it usually doesn't get they don't get punished. And we're talking about the banking system, the financial system, a lot of criminality. And then when that starts coming out, that's when you're going to see a major collapse in the market. Some people believe that's never going to happen, that, the same people that are involved in it also make the laws. So maybe it'll never happen. But if it does, if it ever comes out and gets dealt with the proper way, then you're going to see major panic and sell-off in the market. So I'll let you decide if you think that's ever going to happen. Some people say never. Other people say, yeah, some of this is getting exposed now because a lot of people are waking up and they're seeing what's going on to their own budgets, and they're looking into this and they're saying, wow, this is insane what's happening. But let's get into the financial news here. Some information I want to dissect for you here. And first of all, I have some, maybe it's good news to you, maybe it's bad news. Tech moguls lost a combined $433 billion this year. So if that's bad news, let's shed a tear for the tech moguls. Poor tech moguls. They lost $433 billion. Tech billionaires have lost hundreds of billions of dollars this year as stocks slid and many companies slowed their decade-long streak of constant growth. We see that a lot of these social media stocks really dropping big time. And it was no surprise. I think some people are surprised at how heavily it was tilted towards the tech stocks. But overall, we're in a bear market. By the way, this stock market rally that we saw over the past few months of 2022, this is one of the biggest bear market bounces or dead cat bounces that I've seen in the 10, 12 plus years that I've been really following the stock market and the economy. And I think a lot of it's short covering, a lot of it's hedge funds. Most of these moves up and down in the stock market are not the average investor on Robinhood going in after work and buying and selling stocks. No, it's big money market makers. They have so much leverage. They're able to move the markets with their buying and their selling. It's the hedge funds. It's a lot of the too big to fail banks are involved in trading. And it's not just me saying that. They actually make that public. Just look it up. They'll tell you how much they made via their trading sectors, these big banks. Just go ahead and look it up. Don't take my word for any of this, folks. I'm just giving you the news. I give you my opinion, but a lot of this you can look up yourself. Of course, it's easier to hear it from one source because I spend a lot of time looking through all this. I know a lot of you listen to this on your way to work, on your lunch break, and you may not have time. Like I have at least an hour or two every day that I use to research news. I'm in line at the grocery store and I'm looking up news, and I get text alerts on news. So I'm here to bring this information to you so you don't have to spend all your time doing this. And my wife wishes I did this less. She wishes that I spent more time doing other things besides looking at news. But hey, that's what I'm built for. I'm built to research this stuff for you and analyze it and give it to you in a average everyday language. Now let's talk about real money here for a minute. We're talking about precious metals. When I say real money, I mean hard assets, precious metals. Historically has been used for money thousands of years. It's only over the past 100 or so years we went to this digital system where the currency was not backed by anything. There was no physical backing. You could say it the petrodollar. The petrodollar goes all the way back to the 1940s with the Bretton Woods Agreement. That's going to be eliminated pretty soon. We've got many other countries going outside of the US dollar, trading amongst one another, including trading in physical assets and gold. It used to be when countries went outside the dollar, we would initiate some sort of war. Now there's just so many countries that are doing this, and countries like China that these countries are too big and too powerful for the U.S. to actually keep on doing what we've been doing over the past 100 years or so. So we're going to see big changes coming up. The dollar's being dethroned. It doesn't mean that there's going to be hyperinflation here anytime soon, but we're already starting to see some of the effects of this de-dollarization, as I call it. And we've got central banks around the world accumulating gold like we've never seen before. 2022 was a record year for central banks around the world accumulating gold. You might want to ask yourself, why are they doing that? Are we going to go back to some sort of hard asset money? I think so, and I think you would be wise to look into adding some real money to your portfolio if you haven't done it already. My favorite way is still silver, and for those of you still looking, I've got a link down below that I use. It's SD Bullion, and use that link. I've never had a problem with SD Bullion. Silver rounds. Here's an article here. The price of gold in Egypt has risen to record highs. That's another thing. People say, well, the price hasn't risen up here in the United States. But when you look at other countries, especially countries with a lot of inflation, gold's at record highs. Egypt, let's take a look at what their inflation was here. And this is the official number, equivalent to the CPI number that we have here in the U.S., which is really understated. But if you just look at the official number, Egypt, much worse than we are here. They're over 16% inflation in Egypt. And I would guess that it's probably more like double. It's probably 32%. Just like in here in the U.S., they're saying it's 7-something%. It's at least double that. If you really just look at the cost of everything, it's more than double. So I would think it's similar to a lot of these other countries. The nations, the leaders of these nations, they don't want to admit the real number because that would make them look bad. It would make their leadership look bad. So it's pretty easy to see why we're not being fed, the correct information that's spoon-fed to us here. All right, but when it comes to metals, the price of metals also being suppressed. So the same banks and financial institutions and trading firms that are accumulating precious metals are also suppressing precious metals and shorting precious metals on the paper, on the derivatives market. So keeping the price suppressed, yet accumulating the hard asset at a much lower price than they would normally if the price was allowed to move along with real fundamentals. All right, so that's what's happening. So you've got to understand the big picture here and why you're not seeing hard assets of precious metals rise more than they already are. And we were talking earlier about how this criminality, if it's ever exposed, if anyone's ever held accountable, we're going to see a lot of major changes, including major deflation, drops in the market, drops in the value of homes, plunging stock market, even a plunging cost of living. You're going to see metals reemerge as part of the monetary system, and that's when you're really going to be happy when prices go down, and when of homes and autos, and when precious metals skyrocket like they should and they will. I think in the very near future, you're going to be able to buy a house for a few ounces of silver. I don't know exactly how much because prices of homes vary. But here in California, I'm going to say 150 ounces of silver will buy you a house in the near future. I know you think that sounds crazy, but that's really what I think is going to happen. And some people agree with me, some don't. And if you don't agree with me, then don't buy silver. But if you want to be ready for what's going to happen, and I can't say if it's going to be next year, 5 years from now, but I do know it's going to happen eventually. But we're going to have to go through a lot of pain, a lot of financial hardships before we get back to sound money. A lot of people are going to have to be put into the poorhouse in order to realize what's actually happened. Article here out of CNBC. Everyone thinks a recession is coming in 2023. Even the people that don't pay attention to finance, economics, the way the money works, they're just looking at their budget and they're saying, hey, something's going on here. We can't keep this up. And most people realize they're headed into the poorhouse. They're headed into bankruptcy at some point in 2023. Very likely, most households are getting strained and pinched. But the crowd's usually wrong. The masses are usually wrong. So are they wrong that there's going to be a recession? Well, I think they're wrong because there's going to be likely a depression. And, we have to continue to prepare for what's coming because things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. Again, I wish I had bad news. If I had a very rosy outlook on this, then I would come here and say, don't worry about it. Spend all your money. Don't even worry about it because things are going to get easier. Prices are going to crash. Now, here's something else to pay attention to. Imports have collapsed. We see the smallest U.S. trade deficit in 2 years. Of course, that's not going back very far. But we do see that imports are declining mainly because the U.S. consumer is holding back or pulling back somewhat on their spending. It doesn't mean that you won't see people at the football games and at the amusement parks. It just means that when it comes to some sorts of spending, that customers are pulling back. Less imports from China, but this comes after an unprecedented year of cargo ships being backed up and a lot of businesses panic buying and doing major increases in their imports because at the time, companies didn't know how long these lockdowns were going to last, how long the health crisis was going to last. So now you see a lot of overstock with many of the major department stores and retail chains. Unfortunately, that's not true for food because food, you can't just manufacture that easily. You got to have a farm, a farmer, and water. And we're seeing the drought, the rising cost of living, the rising cost of fertilizer. Food's going to be one spot where I think we're not going to see any deflation at all. In fact, I think it's going to get a lot worse in 2023. So buckle up, strap in, folks. Keep stacking. Hope you're well. Link down below, ST Bullion. Get yourself some real money. Talk to everybody very soon. Bye for now. Peace.